Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Nintendo Everything Refresh. This is the official podcast of NintendoEverything.com and we're here to refresh your memory on what is new and exciting in the world of Nintendo. We've got a mix of news stories, some games, some impressions, some hype this week, so thank you so much for tuning in, and if you've been with us the past 5 episodes, we're on episode 6 now, thanks so much for coming back. Just a quick reminder, we are now on all of these streaming services, so if you'd rather listen to us there, go check us out on Spotify or Apple Music or wherever you get your podcasts. It's not just me here. We have got Dennis Gagliardato. Say hi, Dennis.
Hello, hello.
We've got Luiz Estrella.
Hey, everyone. And
we've got Nicholas Shade.
Hello, everyone.
All right. Well, we have got a lot to talk about this week, so let's just get right into it. There's any week that a Nintendo first-party game comes out is a big week, and we've talked a little bit about it in previous episodes, but it's finally out, Nintendo Switch Sports, kind of the sequel of sorts to the Wii Sports era of games. And Luiz, you've been playing this game for a while now, haven't you?
Yeah, I've bought the digital version of the game on launch, and so far I've been having a lot of fun actually. The game is kind of thin on the offerings. We have just some sports, and there's not a lot of options of how to play those sports. Like, for example, tennis, you can only play with doubles, which is similar to Wii Sports, but I would like to see more options. But so far, the gameplay is what you would expect from those games, and it's really fun to play with friends, to play with family. It's the kind of game that any person can understand because they already know how the sports work, so it's like you don't have to explain a lot about it. And so far I think my favorites, I've been quite surprised because I saw some reviews, and in some reviews they didn't like volleyball and soccer. And those actually I think are my favorites, the new ones. I had a lot of fun with volleyball. I think I really like the way that they managed to simulate the feeling of actually playing volleyball with the... Well, I won't say the names of the movements that you make on volleyball in English, but I think they really managed to recreate the experience of playing volleyball. And soccer, you really don't play like soccer, it plays more like Rocket League. But it still is really fun. I like it's the one that I probably most played on the online because it's 4 versus 4, so it's quite fun to play online modes. So far nothing crazy, but I think the game does well what it sets out to do. You know, I think it's not like a very ambitious game, but so far it's really good. With that said, I'm looking forward to see more updates. We know that golf is coming, but I want to see more modes, maybe other sports beyond golf, but so far pretty solid.
Yeah, that kind of echoes what I've heard, is that, you know, it's a little thin on content at the moment, but overall, if this is the type of game you're looking for, it's probably going to check most of the boxes for you.
Yeah.
Dennis, you said you've been playing this game as well?
That's right, yeah. I played a little bit of it, and yeah, pretty much, I mean, everything Luis said was spot on. There's only 6 different sports at the moment, but I agree with him entirely where I think volleyball and soccer are probably the best ones. Well, actually, I take that back. So soccer is definitely my favorite one, but right behind that is bowling, actually. I love bowling for some reason. Ever since the original Wii Sports, I've just been addicted to bowling. So, but I do love volleyball very much as well. I think the one I like the least, which is probably the one everyone seems to like the least, is the one you hear the least about, is the sort of, I forgot the actual term for it, but it's pretty much like fencing, kind of. Whatever.
Shambara?
There we go, that's the one, yeah.
Sounds so fancy.
It does, yeah. But it's that one's, it's not like bad. I mean, I still have fun with it, but it's definitely the least engaging for me. It's definitely, you know, the one that I don't even really think about when I'm like, okay, what am I going to play next? You know, like unless it's something that pops up on random, it's not something I actively go out of my way to play. But yeah, no, it's enjoyable. It's definitely feels like a product that has been released a little bit too early, if you ask me. There is a lack of, well, it's lacking a lot, but when you compare a game like Wii Sports that came out in what, 2005, 2006, to a game now that we have in 2022, and Wii Sports had just significantly more depth to it in terms of tutorials and medals and things to achieve towards. Yeah, like there's no medals or anything like that. Basically, your sort of drive to keep playing and get better is they incentivize you through these gifts. And every time you play a match, but you can only do this online though. That's the weird thing. Locally, you don't get points for this for some odd reason. But online, you get anywhere between like 30 to 40 points if you win or lose. And if you lose, you still get a decent amount of points. So, you don't feel bad for losing. You still get rewarded to some degree. But yeah, and then with those points, every time you accrue 100 or more, that gives you an option for a gift. Now, these gifts are randomly selected. At the moment, there's 2 different styles to choose from. They have a cute style. It's literally called cute style. And then another one's called, what was the other one? Fancy style, maybe? Something like that? And,
these are like clothes and hairstyles and things like that?
I think the another was urban style. Not 100% sure.
Okay.
What?
Yeah, I couldn't remember what the other one was. I couldn't remember what the other one was at all. But either way, like they were really nice. I personally am a big fan of the sort of redesign of Mii's, if you can call them that. The Mii 2.0s, I guess. I know there was a lot of sort of discourse around that when they were first revealed through the trailer. But personally, I like them a lot. I think they have a lot of charm to them. I think they're really cute. And the way that you can design them, personally, I believe is just so much better than the regular Mii's. However, they're not as detailed as the Mii's. And by detailed, I don't mean necessarily in terms of graphical fidelity, but I just mean in terms of, like, what you can do, right? Like, with Mii's, I mean, how many, like, QR codes went out where you could download Mii's of, like, famous people, people, because you can make all these different sort of styles and looks to create, real people or characters from anime or video game characters, but with this, you can't really do that. You just have a sort of a very small selection of hairstyles, a small selection of clothing. Everything's such a small offering that you don't really have that sort of creative flexibility. But
it does seem kind of light on content to me, and I think that's just even in comparison to, like, in my head, I'm thinking, okay, if I wanted a successor to the Wii Sports era games, I want something that is at least as big as Wii Sports Resort. That game had a fair amount of single player content. I thought it was pretty replayable. Didn't have online play or anything, but I felt like that game was really like a huge expansion of like the original Wii Sports, and to me this seems like it's almost taking a step back and saying, no, we're going to scale things back a little bit and just focus on a few sports and customization and online play, and that's about it. Which, for some people, I'm sure that's all they need. But it's funny to me, Dennis, when you're like, oh, this game came out too early, because I totally get what you're saying. But in my mind, I was like, oh, this game, I think it came out too late. I think they released this game about 4 or 5 years too late.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, this game definitely should have been a launch title, right? Like, this definitely should have been something that mimicked the Wii, right? Especially with the way the Switch, when you look at its life cycle and like what's been happening, and in terms of like sales especially, and how much it's been mirroring the sort of success of the Wii, you would think that a game like that would be a launch title, right? It's a no-brainer. You got these 2 Joy-Con, just like you had the Wii. The Wii remotes, right? And you can just hand one off to another person, and then all you need is that one, you motion controls, and you just go to town, right? And instead, what did we get on launch is we got 1-2 Switch. But we won't talk about that.
No, but, not again.
But, no, not again. Yeah. Not again. We won't talk about that.
Nicholas, I'm curious. You've been eerily silent back there. I'm wondering, is this silence coming from you're just blown away by this game, or is this silence coming from, it's not for me?
More of the latter, sadly. I wish I had more interest in it, but I've just been kind of burned on some of these, like the similar offerings that Nintendo has had, namely Mario Tennis Aces. Those kind of multiplayer games that they've put focus on in the past with the Switch. And I guess with the late Wii U era, where they just don't have enough single player content. And like we've mentioned, some people are going to get really into the multiplayer. They're going to play that a lot. They're going to just spend so much time getting all the ranks on everything. I'm not one of those people that will enjoy the multiplayer that much, so this lack of single player offerings is just kind of killed my motivation to get the game, because there really won't be much for me to enjoy to it.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. Louise, is it true that in this game you play the soccer mode with your hands?
Yeah, that's. I mean, they
Isn't
say
that like
that
the opposite of what you're supposed to do in soccer?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can play the shootout modes with the leg strap, where you can use your legs and like you usually do. And they said that in an update they would make the whole game work with the leg strap, but I don't know exactly how that will work. I mean, I think it will be a little clunky, but I'm not 100% on that. But it works really well with the hands. The only problem is that it is not as straightforward as the other sports. You cannot go to your grandpa or your dad and say, "Hey, play soccer," because it doesn't work like soccer actually works. So it has that. It is not as approachable as the others, but it is really fun. So I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, it's definitely like intriguing to me that they haven't, like, they are going to bring in like a leg controlled soccer in a later date. But yeah, Dennis, to your point about the game maybe coming out too early, like that seems like you're putting a soccer in Wii Sports for the first time, and like you're going to add in leg-based soccer as a patch, you know?
Yeah, which is weird because, if you buy a physical copy of the game, it comes with the leg strap, right? But it seems like there's no real use for it at the moment, so why even bother?
Yeah, I don't.
Odd.
What's? I mean, it's something that comes in the box, but it's not that used. It's very weird. I think I talked about that in the last podcast, but this is the first game that Nintendo is actually releasing the physical cartridge. They are selling officially here in Brazil. So that is really interesting because that's a game that I would like to buy physical because it has the leg strap. And beyond that, another curious thing about here in Brazil, that's the second game in the history of Nintendo, talking about consoles, that it is fully translated for Brazilian Portuguese. The first game was Mario Party Superstars, and now Switch Sports. And that's really nice, but those games that Nintendo has translated so far are games really not heavy on dialogue, like with Wii Sports we have just victory or the numbers of the match or something like that. It's not something crazy. We are still waiting for a translation for Zelda, for Xenoblade, for that game that if you don't know how to speak in English, you really can't play the game because it isn't translated to Portuguese Brazilian so far, but that's a good step. I hope that in the future Nintendo will translate all their games to our language.
Yeah, as you've got me rooting for that as well. I think there's a lot of great Nintendo games that hopefully more people can play in the near future.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot more we could talk about with this game. I have heard that nothing happens when you throw the bowling ball backwards anymore. So I'm very disappointed about that. Like in the original Wii Sports. All right, can anyone confirm this for me? What happens when you throw the bowling ball backwards? Do the Miis still like lose it?
I honestly now, from my experience, they just kind of drop the ball and then a little message pops up and it's just like, hey, don't forget to hit ZR to hold it or whatever. And that's
I've lost all interest in this game now.
Sorry.
All right, well, moving on. Here's something that no, I'm just kidding. This is a game I'm actually very excited about that just kind of came out of nowhere this week. And hear me out, folks. So it's Disney Dreamlight Valley. And yes, it is a Disney free-to-play game, but looking at this trailer, this is like, it's pulling something out of me, man. This is basically taking Animal Crossing's customization elements and Stardew Valley's like farming and life sim elements and throwing it all together with Disney characters and really just like impressive, in my opinion, really creative visuals. I think the game looks great. I'm a little wary about the fact that it's a free-to-play game, but for the time being, it kind of came out of nowhere for me, and I'm like, oh, this looks really cool. Dennis, are you excited about this game?
Oh, very much so. When the press release showed up in my inbox, I was like everything else was irrelevant to me that day because I just kept like looking at it and like reading the press release and watching the trailer and looking at the photos and everything like that. And I was just like, oh my God, like why wasn't something like this made sooner, right? Disney has always had such an eclectic cast of characters that I think appeals to so many people and that we all grow up with, right? So it's interesting as to why Disney has never really dabbled more into the video game space. I mean, obviously they have, collaborations with like Kingdom Hearts, and then of course you have your, now free-to-play mobile games and so on and so forth. And then there's Disney Speed Racer, I believe, something like that, coming out sometime this year as well.
Yeah, Disney Speedstorm.
Yeah, there we go. That's the one. And then they used to have their own publishing label as well. They one of my favorite. It's weird to call it a Disney game, but one of my favorite Disney games ever is Pure. Pure actually, which was kind of similar to MX versus ATV, but like mixed, but very arcadey, even more arcadey, and just a fantastic off-roading game. But yeah, it's just weird that you don't see them utilize their properties, in that sort of way when they have all these wonderful universes that could span into some of the most brilliant video games, I feel. And instead I feel like we usually get something that's a lot more shallow. There's been a few Frozen games, but one of them's like a match 3, and then the other one is whatever that Olaf thing is on 3DS. I don't know what that is. But
not
We also
exactly
have
like
Tsum
barn
Tsum
burners.
Festival,
right. Yeah,
Of course, how
the
could you
Tsum Tsum.
forget?
a classic.
Yeah.
One that I did recently like, though, that we actually wrote a review for here was the Disney Magical World 2. Now, that game was absolutely fantastic because that one was very reminiscent of Animal Crossing, even more so than Dreamlight Valley, because with that one, but it put more of an emphasis on building a cafe, right? But you could go from kingdom to kingdom and sort of you gather these materials, and then from there you create these recipes, and then you get to meet people, and you get to befriend them, and you get to gift stuff to them, and you go through the seasons, and there are seasonal events, so on and so forth. A lot of the mechanics and foundation is very reminiscent of Animal Crossing, but Dreamlight Valley just kind of takes that step further and does it in such a beautiful way. I mean, the aesthetic of this game is fantastic. I mean, right away that was one of the first things I noticed was how beautiful this game was, and even more importantly, how relaxing this game was, because it is a life sim mixed with some adventure game elements. So you want to make sure that you have that nice balance, right, of something that is reminiscent of Animal Crossing, of Stardew Valley, or just simply The Sims, right, and have something that is engaging, but something that also feels personal, right? You want to feel like you're building your own sort of life within the game as well, right? You want to make your own farm, you want to build your own house, and you can have your own aesthetic, which is great because, just looking at it here, I'm on the website now, they have just thousands of cosmetic items, right? Between just not only apparel, but items that you can put just all over the place, really. So you can really build, this Disney dream life to your liking and tailored to you and for you. So it's awesome.
I've been reading up a little bit more about this game, and it's I've got I'm not a crazy Disney fan, but I've got a soft spot for life sim games, especially ones that are doing something kind of different. And just reading some of the details that have come out about this game, there's just some little things in it that are just interesting to me, and I'm like, oh, this will make me want to play it. Some of the things that I have learned is that, so this game does have a real-time clock, kind of akin to Animal Crossing. So if it's nighttime where you are, it's nighttime in the game. It's got some familiar elements, you can go and visit a store, and various places around town. But it's apparently very easy to move buildings around, and it seems like they're taking a bit more of a focus on making the game easy to play. I read that the store and the restaurant, they'll be open 24/7, so you can kind of pick it up and play it at your leisure. It's not where you have to wait for the real-time clock to catch up. So it sounds like they've looked at other games in the genre, and they're trying to be all right, well, how do we make a version of this game that takes together all these Disney properties, but also kind of like maybe even fixes some of the things that, Animal Crossing may be a little more restrictive in certain areas. So I'm excited to see how it comes together. Luiz, Nicholas, are you guys, interested in the idea of a Disney life sim? Is that something that appeals to you at all?
I mean, it sounds good. I agree with Dennis with the idea that Disney does not use their IPs enough in the console gaming ground. We are seeing nowadays with that approach of free to play, but I'm very curious about the game. One doubt that I have, because I did not watch the trailer, is that game a mobile game also, or is it console only?
It looks like it's coming to pretty much everything. So it is coming to mobile platforms, but it's also coming to all the consoles and PC.
Yeah. Now, the interesting thing is also that even though it's free to play, you can actually play it early in two different ways, right? So the game is technically launching in 2023, free for all platforms. However, we can play it as early as this summer one of two ways, right? You can either buy the Founders Pack or be an Xbox Game Pass Ultimate member. Which is great because that's how I want to play it, is through Xbox Game Pass.
That makes it easy.
Yeah, exactly. But I also feel like it would be a great game for the Switch. So one thing I'm sort of hoping for when it does officially launch everywhere is we do have that cross-progression and cross-platform play if there is going to be multiplayer of any kind. Just because a game like this, I would like to... again, I would like to get an early head start on it, either via Founders Pack on PC or just playing it through Xbox Game Pass. But, when it does come out on the Switch, I would love to play a game like that on the Switch. Maybe just relax, maybe play a couple minutes before bed or maybe first thing in the morning before you start your day,
Yeah,
but
it seems like a great
start
fit.
over. Yeah. Starting over for games like that drives me crazy, though, so hopefully that's not the case. But we're seeing a lot more games in recent years that are free to play that definitely prioritize that sort of cross progression and cross play. So I'm hoping that that's the case here as well.
Yeah. What about you, Nicholas? And any interest at all in Disney Animal Crossing?
Probably not, but that's more so because I'm just not super invested into life sim style games. I only play maybe a handful every few years.
Yeah, fair enough.
It's interesting though. Like as we've mentioned, this is kind of Disney starting to push a little bit more into the console space between the earlier Disney Speedstorm that was announced and this now. And hopefully they're able to get something good out of it. It's an interesting venture that they're going through. It's also a very interesting business model that they're going with this kind of early access across all platforms approach. That's not something you usually see when it comes to consoles.
Yeah, could go either way. I mean, Gameloft does kind of have a reputation for churning out mobile games of varying degrees of quality, so there's definitely the potential that this game will come out and just kind of be microtransaction filled and just not really fulfilling to play, but keeping my fingers crossed for the best.
Mm-hmm. But I would also hope that Disney being Disney, they don't want their image to be tainted that way. You know what I mean? That they would step in and be like, look, we understand it's free to play,
yeah,
we're trying to make money, but maybe let's not put ads every 15 seconds.
Disney has made plenty of questionable decisions in the past, and not in the not so recent memory. So, no, fingers crossed. But we've also got some news. So we're going outside games for a little bit and venturing into the film world. The Mario movie, the hotly anticipated. I don't know if it's hotly anticipated by everyone, but some people are very excited for it. Mario movie was supposed to come out this year. It was recently delayed to 2023. I don't really have any strong opinions about this because I don't really feel like I'm like really just wanting to go see Mario jump around in the movie theater, but I don't know.
Chris Pratt's voice.
Oh yeah, yeah, Chris Pratt.
Oh god,
yeah, that's true.
He's so cool.
I will say I was watching that Nintendo Direct when they revealed the cast, and when they were like, okay, Chris Pratt is Mario, and then they just keep going down the list and just like every role.
Yeah, and so casually too. Like it's no big deal. So casually, like hold on, we do need to talk about this. You can't just go. Let's stop. Stop for a moment. Like,
yeah.
Each of the actors, I need a time for.
He is Toad. Like that's just crazy.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I guess I have like this morbid curiosity about it, but you know, if a delay till next year is what it takes to just really for Seth Rogen to just nail that Donkey Kong impression, I'm good with it.
I promise you, Miyamoto probably saw it and was just like, "What is? Okay, no, we got to restart this. we're redoing this.
They're restarting development."
Yeah, pretty much. Have you guys, not to get too sidetracked, but did you guys watch his sort of first foray into films where he did those Pikmin short films a couple years back?
Yeah.
Those were actually really great. Those were really, really great.
Every time someone say that the movie will be terribly bad, I'll say that my hope is that I think Miyamoto's involvement in the project, I think he's really on the creative side. He's not just a producer, you know. I think he's really giving some... he's really being part of the process because for a while now he didn't work in any game. He's not a general producer at Nintendo anymore. If you look at the latest games that Nintendo has produced, in the credits it's always Shinya Takahashi as general producer, not Miyamoto anymore. So I think he's really on that part, on the park also, but also working on that movie. And I know that Illumination made some bad movies, but the technique that they use, the actual animation of their work is actually pretty good. So my hopes that Miyamoto on the creative side and Illumination on the technical side, at the end of the day, things may work out. But with the cast, I really don't know how that will work. I'm really curious to see at least the trailer to know how it will work.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be what gets people into the theaters. I really do think it's just this morbid curiosity about, is this thing actually going to be good?
Yeah, they're going to have to be very, very careful with how they play this out, just because, like Luis was saying, I do think I'm optimistic, right? Because Miyamoto is involved, and he's not going to want, Mario's his baby, right? It's always been his baby. He doesn't want Mario to ever be misrepresented, right? So, if the casting was done the way that it is, I'm sure it was done for a good reason. I'm sure they got his approval on everything. I doubt Chris Pratt just walked in. I would hope he does some sort of voice, at least something to tweak his voice, because from prior voice acting attempts from Chris Pratt, he's just sounded like Chris Pratt.
Yeah, that's what you expect.
Yeah, exactly. Like, he hasn't really made much of an effort to sort of do an accent or, sound just a little bit different. It just sounds like Chris Pratt being Chris Pratt all the time, right? And that's not going to work, I think, here with Mario. And I'm really hoping that Miyamoto's involvement does sort of push people to do their best, not sort of impression, because obviously with the cast that we see, they're not. There's definitely not going to be a 1-1 sort of conversion.
No, yeah.
But have something that is unique to them, but also something that makes sense, right? Where almost like an alternative universe type thing, right? Where it still works. It's a little off-putting, but you're like, oh no, that actually works. And I think we always sort of immediately jump to, oh, this is going to be bad, but then we're sort of taken by surprise, right? Because when there's a lot of passion for a project like this, it turns out really well, and this happens every time a superhero movie gets announced. I always use this as an example, right? When Christian Bale got announced as Batman, everyone was just like, oh, no, I don't know about that. Then the Batman movies came out. They was like, oh, my God, Christian Bale's incredible. Then when Anne Hathaway got cast as Catwoman, everyone was like, oh, no, that's not going to work out at all. Tom Hardy as Bane?
Well, okay.
No, not at all.
Yeah, okay, but you're talking about like real life, like seasoned actors, like taking on relatively serious. Okay, but we're talking like the guy from Parks and Rec who does not have an Italian accent, as far as I know.
True.
But he's not a terrible actor. I wouldn't say he's Oscar level Oscar, but I think with a good direction. One example that I like to use in the gaming world that proves that any concept can work if you really want it is the Mario plus Rabbids. I think if that game came out and it actually came out good, I think any concept in the world can work if you really have a passion behind it.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, in general, Nintendo just kind of has stayed away from these kinds of adaptations for so long. It's been so many years since the Mario movie.
They were traumatized. With the 90s movie.
Right, just the fact that they're kind of getting back into this and they're letting this happen, I doubt they would do that unless they have at least some confidence that it won't damage their brand in some way.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely correct, and I think we're also getting to a good place now as well with the video game adaptations, right? Where like the Sonic movies have been doing fantastic, right? Now the initial trailer, we all saw that abomination, right, of how Sonic initially looked, but thankfully, you know, they listened to the fans, and thankfully they actually had fans, you know, on the actual crew that that were like, okay, no, we do have to go back to the drawing board, you know, with this because the suits up top were like, no, we got to make it more realistic, but it didn't work. And then eventually they went back, they fixed it, and now Sonic 1 and 2 have been just box office hits, right? Detective Pikachu, even before that, really solid film.
A box office hit, a box office hit does not necessarily mean it's a good movie, right? Like people are going to go see it because they like Sonic, but
I mean,
man, like
the bar for gaming adaptations is not the high, right? Sonic is not a fantastic movie, but it is serviceable.
Yeah, no, I mean, no one's gonna choose Sonic over, you know, Toy Story, I think, you know, but yeah, no, I think we're just getting to a good place now where it's like, look, you need to sort of respect the legacy that these characters have, and so long as you have that respect sort of reflected on the screen, you're gonna have something that is enjoyed by many, many people, many families, many individuals, and something that will end up being successful and appreciated. So I'm hoping that that's the case here as well. Even though the cast is some of the oddest casting I've seen in years, if not ever, I do hope that there's a reason why, right? I mean, there has to be a reason why they were cast the way that they were cast. So
do you guys, just a question, do you guys think that if this movie ends up being a huge success, let's say it ends up making more than, I don't know, 500 millions in the box office, if Nintendo will consider making not exactly a shared universe, but movies for other franchises, Metroid, Zelda, if they will really enter into their world? Because it is a lot of money, and Nintendo has a lot of IPs.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that they would consider at that point. I mean, I think there were rumors earlier this year of a Zelda Netflix show being canceled or something. I would assume it's definitely something they're thinking about regardless, but I would imagine at the same time they're kind of hesitant to be trying that with too many franchises. Like Mario's the poster boy, they can figure out what to do with it pretty easily, and they can trust like the Mario brand will carry it. But the further they stray from that, probably the more effort they would have to put into it to make sure that it doesn't end up being too different from the source material and end up just kind of crashing and burning that way.
I would definitely, I mean, you know, if they put out a Metroid movie or a Zelda movie, I'd go see it for sure. But yeah, I think there would always be that part of me just worried, what are they? Because every video game movie that I've seen has not really, I feel like, respected like the canon in the way that I would have wanted it to. But I will say, you know, if they put out a Kirby movie, I would go see that. That would be the instant watch.
Imagine Ryan Reynolds voicing Kirby.
Yeah. I learned recently that there was a Japan exclusive Kirby anime, and I really want to watch it.
Oh yeah.
Was it? Didn't it come to the West too though? Right back at you.
Oh, did it?
Did.
Oh,
yeah,
maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I am just clearly very out of touch, but
it has a dub at least. They released a few episodes. I know there were a few episodes included in the old 20th anniversary Wii game that they released, and I think they were.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think they have dubs for all of the episodes, so I assume it released here at some point on cable.
Oh, that's amazing. All right, I'm going to have to do some more research about this. All right, well, Mario movie delayed to 2023. We might get a trailer at some point, or, well, I'd be very surprised if we didn't get a trailer at some point. In other news, everyone who lives in North America has been very lucky to have, back in the olden days, back in the Wii and the DS kind of era, there was this great program called My Nintendo. And they had a bunch of physical rewards for a long time. You'd buy a game at the store, you get a little voucher, you go onto the website, you collect your points, and you could get some pretty cool Nintendo exclusive stuff mailed to you. That program has been gone for quite some time. Pretty much when they launched the Switch, they stopped doing physical rewards, and they brought in some digital rewards for a little while, but physical rewards, they just kind of started coming back in the last year or so, I want to say. And just this last week, they announced, they were like, okay, well, we're adding, I thought it was pretty cool. They're like, we're putting in some Animal Crossing stuff. Now you can get Animal Crossing coasters, which some people I'm sure are like, oh, it's coasters, it's not that exciting. But, the people who like have this nostalgia for the old Nintendo program, it's like kind of cool. They're like, oh, we can get physical rewards again. So I'm just curious. So Luiz, you guys don't really have like a physical rewards program in Brazil, correct?
Yeah, because it's really limited. I think the majority of the countries don't have actually. It's mostly in the US and maybe Canada. I don't know exactly. But it's just so cool to see some of those rewards. I remember, I think in the past there was one that was the Mario Kart trophies. I'm not sure, but I think... they looked amazing, I remember seeing. And also, I think there was one for Luigi's Mansion, which was like a little diorama, something like that. And I think those, they really look amazing. It would be awesome to make that available for all countries. But the logistics of it probably wouldn't make it worth it. Because I think that Nintendo does this more for their loyal fan base. There's probably not a lot of... it's not something that they really receive a lot of money doing that. But I really like it. I always liked Club Nintendo, My Nintendo. I always participated in the way that I could about those programs that Nintendo has offered.
Yeah, it's I personally am very excited that they're bringing back some of the stuff. And like some of the things that they have that are physical rewards nowadays are just like useful. Like there's one thing that I think you can still get it, but it's basically a Nintendo Switch game card case, just like a normal sized case. There's a retail case, but it has 16 game card slots inside. So you can fit 16 game cartridges in one Nintendo Switch cartridge. Yeah, it's pretty cool. But yeah, I think my big gripe with this program has always been like, it's kind of hard, like you don't really earn platinum points, which is what you redeem for them in like the same way that you used to. So it's actually like, unless you play a lot of Nintendo mobile games, it's like pretty hard to actually like save up enough points to actually earn these physical rewards.
Although there have been the weekly missions now that they added more stuff to Nintendo Switch Online. So that helps a little bit.
Right, yeah. And and I guess the other recent thing too is now you can use your Switch Platinum points to get new icons for your Switch users.
Yeah, those are a lot of fun. I've been actually like redeeming a lot of those, but but of course those have to have some sort of caveat, right? Where you can't just take those frames and mix it in with already existing ones that you would get through your normal profile. So if I wanted Samus on top of like, a sort of Splatoon background that I just got through my Nintendo, I can't do that, right? Like all the icons, frames, yeah, it's ridiculous. And you can't even mix match the games either, so everything has to stay within its property. So Animal Crossing characters, frames, and backgrounds all have to be within Animal Crossing. You can't take an Animal Crossing frame and, put it with what they currently have with a like a Kirby icon. Even though you got all that through my Nintendo, even that still has restrictions. So it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate, but it's fun though. It's fun customizing and seeing what they do offer and making your own sort of icons. I've been changing my icons almost every week because of it. So it's fun. I've been enjoying it. I just wish there was more sort of freedom and flexibility to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's interesting.
I love that kind of stuff. Now that Dennis mentioned it, I don't know if you guys remember the badge arcades on the 3DS, which you could have those little keychains to personalize your 3DS menu. It's something that at the end of the day is not that useful, but it's a lot of fun to use, and I think that the Switch really doesn't have a lot of personality in the system, so those small things are always fun.
See, I agree. I agree 100%. That's always been my biggest thing is the personality, right? Where it's just like I feel like the 3DS was just so much fun, even when you weren't playing games, right? Because you had the
Yeah.
Street Pass, you had the badges, you had the themes, you had all of this stuff that you could do, and even just opening it because of the two screens, right? And like everything about it was fun. Now it's just like I turn on my Switch, and I mean it's a phenomenal console. It's arguably my favorite console ever, but like it's I don't get that same sort of magical, I guess, feeling, that I got when I was playing on my 3DS and even the DS before that, honestly. I wish those badges would come back and have that sort of customization so you do have a console that's more tailored and personalized for you. I think it just makes it, that personal investment just creates much more of an emotional attachment, which in turn I think creates longer lasting memories for when new generations come down the line. You'll always be looking back at that one generation like, man, you know what, I had a great time with that console when that was around.
Yeah, these physical rewards are kind of like I mentioned how there's that like Switch 16 game carrying case. Well, they had one that was very similar in the 3DS era, and I still have it sitting on my shelf, and I use it to store a bunch of my loose 3DS games. And yeah, whenever I pull it out, I'm like, oh yeah, this is like one of those things from like Nintendo's heyday. That's like one of these days, like this is probably gonna be worth something. Like this is like you when you get like one of these physical rewards, like you feel like you're getting like kind of a cool like collector's item,
You
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, I do want to mention that there are physical rewards for my Nintendo stuff in Europe as well. It is, oddly enough, it's a different selection from the US stuff, and even though it's lacking a lot of the US items, it actually has items that the US store just doesn't carry. Like, I recently got an Earthbound Beginnings notebook that you can get through my Nintendo, and it has, like, triangle strategy pins and stuff.
That's awesome. Well,
That's
awesome.
cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I wonder why they don't just make these things. I mean, I know I'm sure there's some kind of shipping or manufacturing
little
constraint,
odd.
but it is weird that they don't just make these things available everywhere. But
Yeah.
I
What
think
do I
it's
know?
time with the collector's editions, also, right? Where it's just like, Europe will get a phenomenal collector's edition. Meanwhile, we'll get just a base game by comparison, or the rest of the world will, or maybe Japan will get an incredible collector's edition, or maybe just the U.S. will get a great collector's edition. I don't know why they sort of,
Yeah, it's always been very bizarre.
segregate that.
Like, Xenoblade
Yeah, that's
Chronicles
weird.
got a vinyl when it came, like, with the definitive edition. The definitive edition's collector's edition got a vinyl in Europe and I think Japan, but in the US it just didn't have that.
I'll never forget the two that I really wanted, three actually that I really wanted the most. One of them was when the Hyrule Warriors initially came out on Wii U. Europe.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, not Europe. They actually no. This happened in all of Europe, but only in one place in the U.S. And the physical boxed copy of Hyrule Warriors actually came with a scarf, a replica scarf that Link was wearing.
Yeah.
Yeah, really nice. However, the only place you could get it here was at Nintendo New York. That's it. That is it. Not sold anywhere in the U.S. except for Nintendo New York, and of course they had a limited amount there, right?
Yeah.
So, but otherwise, Europe, it was readily available. The second one was Majora's Mask 3D on 3DS, where Europe got a fantastic figure of
Skull Kid, I think.
God. Thank you, Skull
I
Kid.
do
yeah.
remember
So,
this.
and that was something that I wanted so bad, and I just never was able to get it, obviously because of my where I was located. So and then the third one being when Fatal Frame, Maiden of the Black Shrine, first came out on Wii U also. That had a fantastic physical copy known as Project Zero in Japan and Europe. A great physical copy that came with, I'm trying to remember, I think it was just a great box set. I can't remember exactly what came into it. But it was an awesome box set that I really, really wanted. But over here in the US, we only got it digitally for some reason. And of course, with the Wii U being region locked at the time, right, there was nothing I could do about it. I couldn't import it and play it. I was just out of luck at that point. So, and there was a couple others, but those were like the three biggest one for me personally, where I was like, man, just like, God, I want that so bad, but unfortunately couldn't get it.
Yeah, I actually have
Well,
the
folks-
Hyrule Warrior scarf right next to me here.
Whoa.
Oh man,
That's awesome.
It's really nice.
How much, Nicholas?
I'm very
Make us
sorry
all
about your
jealous.
How
loss.
much? I'm still in the market for it. How much?
Well, we don't have a ton of time left in the show, but there is one more news story I want to get to, just because it was definitely making the rounds this week. everyone probably remembers Balan Wonderworld, which came
course.
out last year. How could you forget, man? This game was not really loved critically, to put it nicely. My review was not very positive of it. We have a 3-point rating scale at NintendoEverything.com, and I gave it a thumbs down. I sometimes I wish there was a little more nuance, because there are some good things about the game, but overall it was very disappointing to a lot of people. But the big story this week regarding this game that had dropped off most people's radar was Yuji Naka, who was one of the producers. He was the lead producer on the game. He had served as the director of Balan Wonderworld for a lot of its development. But we learned recently that he was removed from his director position about 6 months before the game came out. And he came out this week basically and was kind of trying to tell his side of the story. We only really have his side of the story. And he kind of just came out on Twitter and said a bunch of things, but I'm not going to read through everything he said because it was quite a bit, but the general gist of it was he got in a disagreement with some of the other people involved in the game. Some of it seemed to be regarding the game's music, and there was a misunderstanding about some of the music used in some of the trailers, which doesn't seem like a huge deal to me, but I guess that was a factor. And then he, I guess, was outspoken about the poor quality of the game, and apparently that damaged some business relationships, and that is part of the reason why he was removed from the game, according to him. But he said basically he was in the middle of like court issues, legal issues with Square Enix, and that was why he couldn't talk about this earlier. But it's interesting. We finally have at least some semblance of, so there may have been some internal turmoil at Square Enix that resulted in this game maybe coming out before it was ready.
Yeah, I actually played my fair share of Balan Wonder. I always want to say Wonderworld. Is it Wonderland? Wonderland? Not Wonderworld?
It is in fact Wonderworld. Yes.
Yeah. It is Wonderworld. Okay, so it is. Okay, cool. Because I always mix those two all the time. But I do actually remember reading your review, Nick, which was a great review, by the way.
Thank you.
But it pretty much reflected immediately what I thought just by playing the demo alone. So I'm sorry you had to play the full build. So it was.
It felt like a demo. I mean, it wasn't.
Yeah. The Switch version was an absolute mess, which is why I stayed away from it. However, I did play the demo on the Switch before all the demos were subsequently taken down, but I inevitably got it on the Xbox because I was able to get a physical copy of it for pretty cheap, maybe around like $15 around Black Friday last year. And I put a couple hours into it, and honestly, like, I didn't think it was the worst thing. Like, I have played vastly worse games than this. I think there was just a lot of sort of every once in a while there is a game or a movie or any sort of property, a book, whatever, a song that is the flavor of the month for what to sort of hate on, right? Now, some of the time it's deserved, right? Other times I feel like it's exaggerated. And this is sort of a weird in between where it's like it did deserve it, but it was exaggerated to a bit also, because for me, I thought the level design was fine. I didn't really have much of a problem with the level design. I think my biggest gripe with it was just how shallow it was, because you did have that one button system of like literally any button you click on that controller will make you jump, right? Like it doesn't matter what button you press. Everything's a jump button. Could be the trigger, could be the bumper, could be Y, X. That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Everything's going to make you jump.
Yeah.
And
Unless there's a costume which makes you unable to jump.
Exactly. That was the worst.
Yeah. There are so many, I think, just structural issues with this game that just made it just not fun to play at all, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And that's not even considering the technical issues with this game.
I mean, at the time the game came out, I was working as a reviewer for a site here in Brazil, so I also wrote a review, Nick, for the game. If I'm not mistaken, I gave it a 4 out of 10. And
that's about where I'd put it if we had a numbered scale.
It was the Switch version, of course, and I played from the first level to the last. And it is a game. It's a fascinating game because sometimes they make some decisions that are so outrageous that you are like, it's not like a technical problem. Sometimes it's just a design decision that is so crazy. How did they think that this was a good idea? But while I was playing, I can't say that I wasn't entertained, because sometimes I was playing and it was so bad that was like, sometimes I compare it to another game that Yuji Naka was in the development, that is Sonic 06. And sometimes Sonic 06 has that vibe of being so bad that sometimes it is quite entertaining to see the decisions that they... Because I think it is the ambition, because although the game is bad, there is ambition behind it. And I think that Balan Wonderworld actually has quite the interesting art direction.
Yeah.
So although everything is not quite well thought, the level design is not the best, you see that there's kind of a creator trying to make something, try to give a personality to that project. But the final product is really weird.
It was definitely an ambitious game, and I do get the sense that Yuji Naka wanted it to be something a lot more than what it turned out. And I just wanted to read this quote. This was translated from his Twitter thread from this week. He basically said, quote, "It is such a shame that a project I worked on from the beginning has come to this. Personally, I think it is a real shame that an unfinished Balan Wonderworld has been sent out into the world. I wanted to release it properly as a carefully made action game. I don't think that Square Enix or Arzest are companies that care about games or fans." It's quite the statement to make.
Yeah, the weird part is that Yuji Naka was promoting the game at the time of the release. So that's really weird to me if at the time he was already aware that the game was not that good, or he had to do that because some contract, I don't know. But it's really weird to see him saying that now. And to be completely honest, Arzest is not the best developer out there. They made Hey Pikmin and New Yoshi Island. And Yuji Naka also does not have the best history with 3D platformers. So I don't know if there's a version of this game which is actually way better than what we received, Maybe this confusion on the background made the game have some technical problems, maybe was a little rushed, but I don't think there's a version of this game which is actually a great experience.
Yeah. I mean, in general, like, if he was pulled off the project 6 months before the game released, that's a considerable amount of time, but it wouldn't be enough to change some of the core fundamental gameplay choices, stuff like everything having one button or how costumes work and whatnot. It could definitely lead to the game being more unpolished, but I don't think some of the, like, arguably bad design decisions would have been something that would have changed anyways.
I agree with you. Yeah, 6 months out to release, even if that may have been the point where he was removed, but most of the game is done at that point. You're, in theory, that's usually when things are being polished up, and clearly that didn't happen with this game. But yeah, and again, we are only really getting one side of the story. Square Enix hasn't really commented on any of this, and I don't really expect them to. And I think it is worth mentioning that, like, he says, he was removed from this project by, it was like 4 or 5 people. He was like HR and the producer.
Yeah, that was weird.
So
that's very
sus. He has a reputation for being a bit abrasive, if I recall. He's had a few incidents in the past with that.
Yeah, I definitely get the vibe that there could be a little bit more to this story, so I don't want to pass total judgment. But it's just weird to see this game of all games come back into the headlines in 2022.
True.
But I think just to kind of give what he's been saying some weight in regards to Square Enix, though, I mean, they have, over the last, I don't want to say a couple of years, really over the last decade, really, ever since they started, well, this isn't just a problem with them. This is a problem with gaming as a whole, where ever since the industry started putting more emphasis on live service games and whatnot, and mobile games, Square Enix in particular has been kind of all over the place, right? They have a lot of quality titles, but then they have a lot of not-so-quality titles. And over the last couple of years alone, we've seen Octopath Traveler, Triangle Strategy, Dragon Quest XI, Neo: The World Ends With You, Final Fantasy VII Remake, all exceptional games. But then also within that same time frame, we've also seen Left Alive, Chocobo GP, The Quiet Man, Balan Wonderworld, right?
Chrono Cross
Avengers.
Remaster.
Recently, Babylon's Fall,
Oh my God, yeah, that mess.
Yeah,
Oh,
no, that's a good point.
Jesus. Yeah,
which
so like
interestingly was
it's,
also contracted to another studio,
yeah.
similar to Arzest, but
Yeah.
Platinum
So
Games made
it's
that
all
one.
over the place.
yep.
Yep, they did, and it's weird because Platinum Games, usually I associate them with quality. Personally, I love Platinum Games, but
Oh, for sure.
you know, Babylon's Fall, I don't know if it was at the fault of Square Enix or just misdirection or what was going on, but you know, I think it's, you know, it's weird. It's almost like there is no in between, right? You either have these incredible games from Square Enix, or you just have these, oh my God, what happened? You know, over the last couple of years, anyways, and it just kind of makes you question what's going on and why they're putting so much priority on some games over others. Because I think at the end of the day, you know, there's people that you do have a market for these games, but you're not going to if you treat these games like crap. You know what I mean? So like Chocobo GP, I feel like could have been a big hit. But because of all the microtransactions and the season passes and the absurd sort of mithril crystals and whatnot that they have in there, it's just like this plays and looks just like a free-to-play mobile game. And yet for some reason I'm paying almost as much as Mario Kart 8 Deluxe on the same system that it's exclusive on. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Like that just seems like a mess to me. So
Yeah. Yeah, there's certainly not a lot of patience nowadays for these games that come out, and it's, you know, you put out something like Balan Wonderworld or Chocobo GP, and you know, even if you going down the road and fix things, you've kind of already left that sour taste in the mouths of gamers,
Exactly.
and so it's it's maybe too little, too late. But I this is one of those stories where I feel like, you know, down the road we're probably gonna get the full story about the development of this game, and I for one will be very curious to read about it. All right, well that just about wraps up our show for the week. But before we say goodbye for another long 7 days, roughly, just want to ask our favorite question: what has everyone been playing? Nicholas, let's start with you. What have you been playing this last week?
So very excited that I finally completed Xenoblade 2. Put my nose to the
Wow.
grindstone,
Wow,
and that's
yeah,
done.
congratulations.
Thank you. Challenge mode was a real struggle for Bringer of Chaos, but now that's done, and I can just wait for Xenoblade 3.
Now, Nicholas, when you say you finished Xenoblade 2, did you also finish the Torna DLC?
Yeah, so funnily enough, I actually completed the Torna DLC last year, or actually, maybe actually 2 years ago, because I did that a while ago since it was a bit shorter. But yeah, this was this was going to be a bit more of an investment, which is why I hadn't gone into it right away. But it's finally done, and now that it's done, thinking of what else to play. This is probably not the best decision, but the thing that comes to mind that I want to play through next is Octopath. So I'm going to be going from like a 100-hour RPG to like a 90-hour RPG.
Perfect.
Nicholas, I think
It'll save you
you
10
might need an intervention. This seems unhealthy.
No, it's perfectly balanced. Go on.
Yes.
I don't know how you do it, man. I wish I had the drive to play through these massive RPGs. I can't do more than 1 or 2 a year.
Yeah, it's really tough liking RPGs because, I mean, like you said, it's such a time investment. You can't just do it like casually, unless it's like I don't know. I guess Live Alive is coming out, and that'll be like 20 hours apparently. But for the most part, you get to an RPG, you are dedicating probably 50 hours minimum.
Yeah, it's
Nicholas-
a commitment for sure.
Nicholas, did you get all the blades in Xenoblade 2,
Yes.
including Elma, Cosmos? Oh,
Yeah,
God.
all the blades, max level, all the driver skills, all the challenges, all the
Man.
quests, all the Merc missions. It's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
see, I've
This
only
is a
ever
game
done
with
that
a gacha
one.
system. It's not easy to make 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. I've only ever done that with, like, I think one RPG where I absolutely 100%ed it front to back, and all it became was a paperweight afterwards, was the first Bravely Default on 3DS. I spent
Oh,
120 hours. I did everything. I was addicted to that game. Everybody, job level 99, all jobs. Everybody was max level. Everybody was just, I got all the weapons, just everything I could possibly get. Did all the quests, main quests, side quests, everything. I mean, there was literally nothing for me to do in that game anymore. It became a paperweight after that.
Yeah, Bravely was so much fun.
Oh, that's impressive. I think the only JRPG where I kept playing after finishing it, but because after you finish the game, there's more amazing content is Dragon Quest 11. I don't know if you guys actually played it, but that's a game where to get all the story, you have to make more than just the main story. It's really amazing what they did with the game.
All right. Well, Nicholas, congratulations on beating Xenoblade 2 again. I should emphasize. Thank you. Luiz, what have you been playing?
So I've been playing mostly Wii Sports, as I've been playing casually on the online modes with friends, and as I said, I've been having a lot of fun. But I also started the Octo expansion from Splatoon 2 because Nintendo gave us in the expansion pack, so now I can actually play it, and I've been having a lot of fun. Actually, it's been a while since I did not play Splatoon 2 for a couple of years, I think, and now I returned. I'm playing Octo expansion, but also some ranked matches, and it's really cool. Instead of the usual model of levels in the main story, you have challenge. So there's actually a lot of gameplay variety in the Octo expansion. I've been really enjoying that. And also the writing in the DLC is really good because there's an extra where you can see like a Discord conversation between some characters like Pearl and Marine. And it's just amazing, the writing. They use a lot of slang. It's just really cool.
Yeah, I've heard it's in terms of single player content, it's like very substantial and adds some interesting lore to the broader like Splatoon universe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a really fantastic expansion. Yeah, it's a fantastic single player expansion. It really makes me really makes me optimistic for Splatoon 3 and that they're going to further expand the single player with that because true. It was just so good.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, I haven't checked out that expansion yet, so I'll have to get on that now that it's on Switch Online. Dennis, what about you? What have you been playing this last week or so?
Yeah, so I've kind of been going back into my backlog a little bit, and even though I played like halfway through it, I just kind of fell off, but now I'm jumping back into it, which is the Famicom Detective Club. But I had originally beaten The Missing Heir, so I beat that last year, but now I'm playing The Girl Who Stands Behind. That's the one I'm currently playing. And man, those are fantastic visual novels. I mean, if you're a fan of visual novels, these are like some of the best I've ever played, not only because of their stories, but just because of how uniquely that they're you play them. Like the gameplay is so unique because it's not just a visual novel, certainly not a kinetic one where you just press A and then you move on to the next line of dialogue, right? Like this is something where you do have to actually feel like a detective and do detective work even more so than something in, say, Ace Attorney, because you're having to talk to people, investigate your surroundings, show people evidence, and which you do in Ace Attorney. But the way Ace Attorney does it is a little more linear, and in this regard, there's so many different. In Famicom Detective Club, there's so many intricate ways in how you can go about getting the information that you need. And not only that, but traveling from place to place, and you are in modern-day Japan as well. And all the renderings, the illustrations are just beautifully, beautifully done.
Oh, it's a gorgeous
fantastic game. Yeah, oh, absolutely. It is just a fantastic, fantastic game. And I hadn't personally heard about it. I didn't realize it was a remake of the NES games of the same name. But yeah, no, it's just brilliant visual novels. And if you're a fan of murder mysteries or just visual novels in general, do yourself a favor and check it out because it really is fantastic.
It makes me sad that Nintendo didn't follow up with more visual novels after those ones because I mean, in the NES era, they made those games that are pretty advanced for the time because there's a lot of the story. There's a lot of options and all those interactions that you have is not the usual visual novel where you're only watching those characters speaking. I was really happy to see those remakes, and I really want to play those games. I had forgot about them. Now that Dennis mentioned it, I remembered. I really have to buy them.
Yeah, I can't recommend them enough. I reviewed both of them when they came out, and man, like I could not put them down. Like I found those stories super compelling, and yeah, like you said, Dennis, the actual you really do feel like you're solving this mystery, like more so than pretty much any other visual novel. type
Yeah.
experience that I've played. Like, you really feel like you are the person solving this mystery, which is just so satisfying. And yeah,
100%.
they're gorgeous. I can't recommend them enough.
Yeah, and just like Luis said, it was actually one of the first things I said after I beat The Missing Heir, which was like, why doesn't Nintendo do more visual novels? Clearly they have the talent for it. This is fantastic. I want more visual novels like this, please. It's so good.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, those were written by Sakamoto, which still directs the Metroid games, so he could make a new one.
Oh, yeah,
Oh
absolutely.
yeah, I didn't know that. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, like you, Dennis, I've been kind of working my way through my backlog. In between reviewing games, I try and go back and like finish some of the things that I've put down for a little while. And a couple years ago, I started playing through all of the Yakuza games, and I'm currently on Yakuza 5, which I don't know. I think, Dennis, I know you're familiar with the series, but
I have played every single one. Yeah, so, and I binged 3, 4, 5, and 6 about a year and a half ago.
yeah, okay.
We marathoned it up to the release of Yakuza Like a Dragon. So yeah, I'm
Got
a
it.
big fan of those games. Yeah.
Yeah, Yakuza 5, man, like, so I've been enjoying the games for the most part, but I was not, like, Yakuza 5 is just a massive game. Like, for those who aren't familiar with it, this game takes place, it's got 5 different playable protagonists, and it takes place across, like, 4 or 5 open world cities. It is just a massive game. And I am only, I want to say, like, halfway through it. Yeah. So I've got quite a bit of work ahead of me, but it's really compelling. Though it's the Yakuza games, like, they have very convoluted stories, and they can be a bit hard to follow if you're like not very familiar with like how the Japanese Yakuza works in real life. But the 5th game, I think, does a really good job connecting to previous games in the series, and the story's had me hooked so far, even if it's a little slower. I don't think this is a huge spoiler, but about halfway through the game, you start playing as Haruka, which she is, this game franchise is mostly about these like grizzled, manly, like Yakuza gangsters fighting each other in the streets and throwing bicycles at each other, just totally absurd. And then like halfway through this game, you take over as Haruka, which is the main protagonist's like adopted daughter of sorts, and all of a sudden it turns into like a like rhythm game where you're like basically playing her like music career,
Man.
and you're like
amazing.
managing her career as an idol. Yeah, it's totally bonkers, but a lot of fun.
I've always wanted to play this series just because of the memes. I saw so many memes. It seems to be so much fun. But there's so many of them. It's like I just don't start playing because I think, oh my god, I have to play all these big JRPGs.
There's like 8.
It's like it's like it's like someone recommended me One Piece. I think, man, I would never stop watching if I start right now.
Well, you could, if you're new to the series, you can start with the newest mainline game, Yakuza Like a Dragon, because that has
Oh, I heard about the one.
totally new cast of characters. So
Oh, interesting.
you can jump in
Okay.
fresh with that one. Yeah,
Is that one
But
on
I
the Game
haven't-
Pass yet?
it is. It is on Game
Oh,
Pass.
great.
I have a hunch it's been on there almost a year though, so I have a hunch it might leave in June or July. But
Yeah,
so you might want to
probably.
pick it up soon. Yeah,
Oh my god. Yeah, I'll try.
That's another one of those massive games that could suck up a lot of your life, Louise. So be careful.
Interesting.
All right, folks. Well, that just about wraps up our show for the week. If you made it all the way to the end of this episode, you are an MVP. And thank you so much for listening. This has been episode 6. If you like the show, tell your friends and drop us a line. Our show email is in the show notes. I will say, I check it every week. We're always looking. If you submit a listener question or a listener topic, you will be one of the few. And there's a pretty good chance we might want to talk about it on the show. So light up our inbox. We are ready to hear what you think of the show. And if you have anything interesting, yeah absolutely. And that's just about it. So we will be back next week with more Nintendo news and games and everything going on in the world of Nintendo. Thank you so much for joining us.